Eating the standard American diet will shave between 6 and 8 years off of your life expectancy over eating, say, the Okinawan diet. I'd say maybe 30% of how long we're living, or lack thereof, life expectancy, lies in the sedentary lifestyle. The fact that we've engineered most of the physical activity out of our lives because we drive everywhere, and we have engineered most of the physical activity out of our life through conveniences. So, but what we've come to find in Blue Zones, that there's no one single factor that explains longevity in these 5 places, but it's really a combination of mutually supporting factors that help people do the right things for long enough and avoid the wrong things so they're not developing a chronic disease. So what do I mean by that? So people in Blue Zones are eating wisely, largely a whole food plant-based diet. There we go. That's view requests. There we go. Coming with us right now, I think. I believe I pushed all the right buttons. But to finish the thought, it's the fact that their life is underpinned with purpose. They're surrounded by people, the right type of people who enforce the right kind of behaviors, and they also live in places where the healthy choice is the easy choice. When it comes to longevity, there's no short-term fix. I know you can go to a lot of other Instagram accounts and hear about all kinds of other programs that will make promises that you can take certain supplements or certain pills and live a long time. Not true. There's no pill, there's no supplement, there's nothing on the scientific horizon in any form of immediacy that promises for greater longevity. Maybe Bradley, who's coming on now, will refute me on this one, because I know he's doing some interesting research around the FOXO3 gene, which we want to hear about. Bradley, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Dan.
Yeah.
I don't know about us.
I'm going to turn you up a little bit, as it were. Okay. So you're coming to us from where?
Live from Honolulu, Hawaii.
And you are the professor and director of research at the Department of Geriatric Medicine at the John A. Burns School of Medicine, University of Hawaii, Manoa. Is that on your card?
It is indeed. Would you like to see it? Got one right in my drawer here.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could turn your volume up a little bit. We're barely hearing you.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
How about now?
There we go. By the way, Bradley went out and got a Instagram account just to do this interview with us today. So thank you for that. I think this is your first Instagram Live ever.
It is. I'm kind of in the dark ages when it comes to technology, so I had to get my 12-year-old daughter to set up the account. So I think now that I have, tweens, that I'm really going to start taking off in this area. It's a lot of fun to, do these interviews and interact with people and share knowledge. So you might not have heard of the last of me. You might have created a monster here, Dan.
Well, I know you toil away in anonymity a lot, and a lot of people have used your research to telegraph out everything we know about Okinawa in America and Canada is really thanks to you and your brother Craig. You guys are twins. I'd like to think of him as your slightly less good-looking twin brother, but you two have been amazing mentors for me and for Blue Zones for over 20 years. We first came to see you in 1999 when we were doing the Interactive Quest. And so just very publicly, I want to thank you and acknowledge the enormous contribution you and your brother have made to longevity and helping other people live a long time. And by the way, for those of you listening right now, I'm going to be monitoring the feed, and we will be I will be asking Brad your questions as this unfolds. But we have a feature for the Blue Zones newsletter, 9 questions. So I'm basically going to build this conversation around 9 questions for you. I think they're questions that people are interested in when it comes to living longer. But first question, I guess, is can you just talk about how you and your brother came to study Okinawa? You guys were from Canada, and all of a sudden you're in Okinawa, and again, this is Professor Dr. Bradley Wilcox. Somebody was just wanted me to repeat your name. I just wanted to make sure that got out there. So Brad, I'll shoot it over to you.
And that's Wilcox with 2 L's, not 1.
Thank you.
That was some kind of mistake of immigration when my family moved to Canada originally. A few generations ago, we had 1 L, and then all of a sudden we got an extra L. And it's kind of been the bane of my existence ever since.
Well, Canadians are very generous with everything, including L's.
Not everybody spells it wrong. Yeah, so yeah, that's a really good question, Dan. I really appreciate the shout out. I mean, if it wasn't for Dan really getting, we got the word out initially with some of our books, the Okinawa program and the Okinawa diet plan, NYTimes bestsellers, but then we sort of dug our head in, really more into the research and not so much getting out there and spreading the message, but Dan has been a major writer and a major, learned a lot of the science and really got the word out like no one else has. And, so I really, I want to give a shout out to Dan here. So I really appreciate that, Dan. It's been a real pleasure working with you for the last couple of decades, and hopefully we got a few more decades in us.
I'm going to 100. I don't know about you, Brad. I mean, that's my goal.
Yeah. So
how does it occur to two boys in Canada to get on a plane and fly to Okinawa and explore longevity?
We're always interested in health. Grew up really physically active. Playing sports. Of course, Canada, we played hockey, of course, and soccer in the summertime, and the 1 month of summer that we get in Canada. The rest of the time it was hockey. But we got really into health, and as we got through high school and we got very interested in health, I started reading books by people like Paul Bragg, and that was talking about fasting way before it became how shall I say, popular, and way before even the science was catching up to the folklore on it. So, and really showing that there is a benefit to fasting. So as we got through our education, I actually started working on a study when I was at the University of Toronto in the early 1990s, and it was on basically prostate health in men. Every man over the age of 50 knows where his prostate is. You get that annual exam, and so I was
I think I lost mine.
So I was fascinated by the differences in the Japanese population. I read a book that was called the Honolulu Heart Program, which I eventually started working with in Hawaii. But I was fascinated that you had these immigrants from Japan that came to the United States in the 1880s to the early part of the 20th century, and as they generation after generation, initially they came with very, very little heart disease, but they had higher levels of strokes in Japan, mostly due to untreated high blood pressure and too much salt in the diet. But when their children are born and their grandchildren are born, gradually strokes started to disappear from the population, even though it's the same genetics, and coronary heart disease, heart attacks started to appear. And so there was a push at that time to try to understand this from an epidemiological perspective. And that's why the Honolulu Heart Program was created, because we compared Japanese Americans in Hawaii that were second generation. Their parents were born in Hawaii, are born in Japan, and they were born in Hawaii. So they were sort of in between in terms of their diet and lifestyle. And then we compared them to Japanese in Japan, and then third generation in Japanese in San Francisco, who were even more Americanized and more acculturated and had more American diseases. So we knew that something was going on, and we just had to figure out what. And that's what we started delving into diet. And I wanted to do just a small study as a medical student when I was at the University of Toronto. And so I met this guy, David Jenkins, who was one of our professors. We were one of the few courses, medical schools in all of North America that offered a nutrition course. Of course, that was my favorite. And he was one of the professors. And when I finished the lecture, I just ran up to him, and he was standing up there kind of gritting his teeth because he had just been to the hospital to have some kind of lymph node biopsy, and he didn't believe in painkillers. So he was kind of gritting his teeth through it. And Dr. J, you're not even taking an aspirin or a Tylenol? No, I'm okay, Brad. And then he even brought me back to his office despite his pain and took me on as a research student. So that's what led me. We started the study in Toronto with Japanese Canadians looking at men's health. And one of the guys in that study was an Okinawan Canadian. And he turned out to be the longest lived man in Ontario, Canada, Canada's biggest province. And I said, gosh, I don't know. At that time, I didn't know the difference between Okinawa and Oklahoma. So I kind of thought, wow, this is kind of interesting. So I got to know him better and knew his family and his wife. She was just a young thing in her 90s. And so she said that the secret to his longevity, he was 105. The secret to his longevity was that she fed him healthy Okinawan foods in Canada. So whatever she could adapt from the Okinawa diet to make him, healthy and, enjoy his diet.
So somebody's asking us right now how much meat you recommend for a longevity diet.
Well, with me, I'm what I found in my research and it's mostly about balance. In Japan, it's so much that they don't have how shall I say, they're not so much, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to eat that, like you are in America. They're more like flexitarians. They're flexible with their diets, but on balance, it tends to be low in red meat, higher in fish, and much higher in vegetable content. So I don't recommend a specific amount, but the Okinawans were eating less than about 15 grams a day of meat in general.
And that's about a half ounce of meat a day, just to convert it to we non-gram people here in Minnesota.
Yeah, but that, so the meat was never,
got that a half an ounce a day. That's like a burger, a week.
Yeah. So I think the dietary idea that they have over there for meat is not the main dish. It's not like us, in America or Canada. We go out and we say, okay, what are we gonna have for dinner? Fish, chicken, steak. It's not like that there. It's like they have dishes, but the meat is more of a garnish than anything. So if you kind of approach it that way, it doesn't mean you can't have a steak once in a while, or so it's my wife, she's Japanese from the old country, and she says, in America they all say it's a culture of no, I can't eat this, no, I can't do that. Why can't you just keep it in balance? And so that's also
I love that culture of no. We need a culture of yes and a culture of balance. What do you guys think? Culture of balance makes sense to you? Well, let me ask you, at its peak, Okinawa was the longest lived place, not only in the world, but the history of the world. Can you give us any statistics that kind of bring that anecdote to life?
Yeah, I mean, in a pretty straightforward sense, and like Dan just mentioned about balance, Japan is the world's longest lived country and has been for most of the last 60, 70 years, but it wasn't always. The Swedes were the longest lived back in the 60s. The Swedes, they traded spots with other Nordic countries like Iceland, and it was only when they got good public health that they were eliminating the major causes of death. Which I want
to highlight a point here.
Sure.
You said public health.
Yeah.
And we are so obsessed in this country with sick care. We're spending $3.7 trillion a year in sick care. Less than 5% of that is in public health. And you just pointed out that what made Okinawa a longevity hotspot was the advent of public health.
Yes, because if you've got a society which, doesn't have good public health, then what do you die from? Infectious diseases. And what were we dying of in the United States, 100 years ago, 150 years ago? Tuberculosis. That was the number one killer. And then when we figured out a way to cure tuberculosis and get, good preventive health examinations, all of a sudden, that's when things like lifestyle can really, really kind of stand out in the epidemiology statistics, like causes of death. And so we shifted. And think about in the early part of the 1900s here, the leading cause of death, other than infectious diseases, was stroke and stomach cancer. And we see a lot less stroke
Stomach
now,
cancer.
and we see a lot less stomach cancer because we've learned, good public health. Stroke, well, what do? You eat less salt, number one. You exercise. You eat lots of vegetable foods. You take medications if you need to. And with regard to stomach cancer, in terms of diet, we used to eat nothing but, we didn't have refrigeration back in the day. And that's probably, refrigeration is one of the highest correlated factors for reducing stomach cancer. Because why? Because refrigerated foods, they don't spoil, and you don't have to salt them heavily. How did you preserve foods in the old days? You just, like in Minnesota, you dug a hole, you had your,
That's right.
What do you call that? Kind of like a
the
little storage.
the root cellar.
The root cellar. That's it. The root cellar. So that you had the root cellar. What was in the root cellar? Salted pickles, salted meat,
Yeah,
salted
vinegar.
milk.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So that's extremely hard on the stomach. And the other factor when you have refrigeration is you have a better sanitation. So salt is one of the leading dietary factors of stomach cancer. And Helicobacter pylori, an infectious disease, again, stomach cancer is an infectious disease in a large part. That's a tiny little bacteria that nobody ever thought could survive in the stomach at such a low pH. It's so acidic in the stomach. But these Australian researchers discovered it, a couple of decades ago, 2-3 decades ago. We replicated that in our study in Hawaii. We were the first to do that in the United States. And now people get tested for this bacteria. And you can eliminate with like a 2 or 3 week course of antibiotics. So those two factors plus blood pressure control.
I think you bring up an important point about stomach cancer and the connection to this bacteria. How do we keep from getting this bacteria, and how do we know if we have it and if it's causing us trouble?
Well, it's interesting because you think that number one is symptomatically. If you have first of all, if you have an ulcer, you must check your Helicobacter pylori status, H. pylori, 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 and it's really that's good medical sense, and your doctor should know that. But if you're having constant troubles with your stomach, it's possible that you may not have an ulcer, but you still might have the bacteria. So you just it makes good public health sense to check it. I'll give you an example, and this is coming from Japan. My wife's mother, her mother died of stomach cancer. We had 3 out of her 4 grandparents died of stomach cancer, and here's Japan with still higher stomach cancer than us, and they're not checking regularly for Helicobacter pylori. So I said, get her checked. She had it. Of course, and she was already, I think near 60 by the time she had it checked, and so she probably would have died of stomach cancer.
She would have caught.
Yeah, so she got 2 weeks of antibiotics, she cured it, and now she's never had a problem with her stomach ever since.
Brad, we're getting a number of questions here about quality of salt. There's gray and pink salt and Himalayan salt. Is it better for us to use these alternate salts if we want to preserve our stomach health or avoid cancer?
I think the major question is how much sodium is in the salt. So if so salt is NaCl, like sodium chloride, 1 molecule of each, and you can have salts that have potassium chloride, which are a little bit better, but the bottom line is just too much sodium basically is a problem. Why? Not just hard on the stomach, but it also, with sodium comes water. So in order to balance too much sodium in your body takes on more water, and then your blood pressure goes up because it's got to deal with extra volume. So just eating less than whatever source it is You can use a little bit here and there. That you don't have to be a fanatic about it, but you're supposed to, in general, eat less than 2 grams of salt a day, no matter
That's
what.
not a lot. Let me move on. I have a 2-part question here. Time just flies talking to you, so we're already 26 minutes in, and I've asked one question, official question, but questions, 2-part question about longevity and the lessons the Okinawans give us. And the first question is about the Okinawa diet. What are the main component? Like, what are the specific foods in the Okinawan diet, and how would you sum it up? And again, for those of you just joining us, we're with Dr. Bradley Wilcox, originally from the Okinawa study, now from the University of Hawaii. He wrote the New York Times bestselling book on the Okinawan diet, and indisputably the world's expert on Okinawan longevity. So what should we eat? What foods do Okinawans, traditional Okinawans, by their example, suggest that we ought to be eating?
Well, really, the evidence from the Okinawans is that if you could sum it up, it's pretty much a plant-based diet. It's not vegetarian, but it was about 90% plant foods, and the major vegetable was the sweet potato. So a root vegetable, a tuber, if you will, and they come in various colors. My favorite is the purple color, but you can't always get that. I'm sure if you're in a place like LA or Honolulu, they're at the salad bar, so you can get it. So that's one of the things when I moved to Honolulu. I was working at this research institute, and they were affiliated with this hospital, and so this hospital had a cafeteria that we got a discount at. So I go over there and say, "Oh, okay, I wonder what's on the plate around here." If it's and it was way better than the cafeteria that I had at other places that I trained at, including a very famous place in Minnesota, south of you.
Yeah, Mayo Clinic. What else besides the sweet potato?
They had just a whole range of green and yellow vegetables. They bitter melon. They had lots of melons and other tubers, and so it's mainly a vegetable diet. But they also ate a lot of soy products. Tofu, miso soup. They ate more soy than any other population that I've ever looked at.
Now, I'm going to interject here because there's a certain percentage of the people listening right now who go berserk as soon as you talk about soy because of genetically modified GMOs. Are you worried about soy products made from genetically modified soybeans?
Well, there's been some studies, and there just hasn't been solid evidence that there's a huge difference. I mean, we had the papaya, for example, here in Hawaii, native fruit, but it was being decimated by these particular insects. And the only way we could save the papaya was to modify it so that they were resistant genetically, so that they were resistant to this insect. Now we have papayas, and they're fantastic. So there's, modifying something is not necessarily going to make it bad. It could, but you really need the evidence before you kind of
dismiss,
make your decision as to what's best for you. Yeah. So I think it's worth studying. I think it's nice to have things as natural as possible.
Is Okinawan tofu much different than the tofu we would get, say, for example, at Whole Foods?
Oh yeah. It's when the first time I tried it, I felt like it was almost like had the consistency of cheese. Tofu, it's so floppy sometimes. You cut it and it falls apart, and it's solid over there. They made it with natural seawater from Okinawa, and it's higher in protein and a little bit higher in the healthy omega-3 fatty acids in there. So they're like it just tastes. It also tastes really good. It's like it was probably the first time, maybe 20 years ago when I first tried it. It was probably the first time that I ever had tofu where I could just put a little bit of low sodium soy sauce on there, and eat it plain
Mm-hmm.
and like it.
And
So
can we get Okinawan tofu in America, or is that extra firm tofu that we see in grocery stores? Is that the same thing?
no, no, I don't. It's really not available here. Dan, maybe you and I should work on that.
I think we should. You know, I like to think of myself as the king of beans, and
You're
tofu is just
you're
a
full of
version of beans.
beans.
How about turmeric? That
Oh,
seems to have a lot of pretty good evidence around it. And I noticed in Okinawa, turmeric was used in teas. It was used as a prophylactic before people go out and have a night of hard drinking. I met these guys who take turmeric ahead of time. And of course, that's that yellow spice you see in curries. Do you believe turmeric is contributing to the longevity situation?
I think it's one of the factors that the Okinawans have. Uh, they're kind of their whole style is kind of like Japanese with salsa, if you will. You know, everything's a little. You know, the kimono's a bit more uh, bright, colorful, free flowing. The food is spicier, and it's Okinawans were great traders. And I'm gonna, you know, borrow Deborah Franklin, who's a good health writer in America. She coined that term. Okinawans are like Japanese with salsa. So I gotta put a shout out to her. And it really is the case. Even the personalities are more open, and they're having fun all the time, and they're really close in terms of their families. But the diet originated because they were a great trading nation back in the, you know, from the 14th century to from when records began. They would trade from, they basically pick up stuff in China, and they take it out as far east as, you know, and meet, you know, go to Indonesia, go to India. The traders from Portugal, they'd meet them there, trade with them, and they brought all kinds of stuff, you know, back to the east. So and they were also the ones that were responsible for basically, they got the sweet potato from the Portuguese, got the sweet potato to the Chinese, and the Okinawans traded with Chinese all the time. And Japan was pretty much closed, hard to trade with back then, and they brought the sweet potato to Japan. And the sweet potato is what saved the Okinawans from starvation, because you can't grow rice well in Okinawa, so they never ate a lot of rice. They're not, you know, back in the day, if they ate rice, it was not
That's so
common
interesting.
rice. Yeah, it was like brown is brown, and their main carbohydrate was the sweet potato, because Okinawa is Hurricane Alley. They get more hurricanes there than typhoons than a lot of other places.
And
And
because it's a root vegetable, it survives the typhoons and hurricanes.
exactly, so you can grow it there, and because they were having, you know, back in, you know, a few hundred years ago, it was crop failure after crop failure, and the sweet potato came in, and all of a sudden, bingo. But the problem with Okinawa now is that there's been so much, how shall I say, bad influences from, you know, certain other cultures. And we you know, we like to say, oh
Not
yeah,
to mention the United States. Very diplomatic there.
yeah. But this is the, you know, everybody likes to complain about, you know, the American dietary influence on the Okinawans in terms of replacing sweet potato with white bread, you know, as the main carbohydrate. Well, it's not just white bread, it's white rice. And that's from Japan. So there was a Japanization of the diet too. It wasn't just the United
Yeah.
States that was taking
Well,
away
I think Okinawa suffered, especially because of the American base there around, you know, I've spent a good bit of time there myself, and you see just a sprawl, a junk food forest of McDonald's and Burger King and Pizza Huts and Kentucky KFCs. And it's sad to see that this standard American diet, which we know kills 750,000 Americans every year, is displacing what was manifestly the healthiest diet the world has ever produced. And I think you sent me a statistic a moment ago, last night, that Okinawans were the longest lived people in the world, and now they have the shortest life expectancy of all of Japan's 47 prefectures. Am I right on that?
Yeah, that is true. So it's a generational thing now. I noticed a couple of questions. So brown rice over white rice, yes, for sure. I eat a fair bit of rice, and but white rice is banned in my home. And the issue with rice is that when you cook it in a rice cooker, which is how you should cook rice, especially a Japanese rice cooker, you it becomes soft and fluffy and it has a nice taste. And then when you cook brown rice, if it's not a good rice cooker, it'll be like hard and chewy. It's definitely chewier, but you can get a really, really nice texture to it and bring out the flavor if you have a special kind of rice cooker. You have to have that kind of rice cooker that
Can you
it's like
tell us what kind of rice cooker it should be?
you're gonna have to have me on again
All
because
right.
I
We'll
have to
put
run
it
to my
here.
kitchen right now and look at it. But yeah, so it wasn't, and I had to really work on my wife because she was like, brown rice, even though she's really healthy and she studied the Okinawan diet too, and she's a great and amazing culinary person. She had to. I said, no, there's no white rice in this house. That's just, why would we, use a kind of a very high glycemic carbohydrate that has the same glycemic index as table sugar and white bread. They're all at 100. They're at the top of the glycemic index. White rice, table sugar, and white bread. So those are things that don't exist in my house.
Smart. Back to turmeric for a minute. What's your opinion on turmeric?
Oh,
Turmeric.
yeah, sort of got off that topic. I think it's really powerful, and there's actually some interesting studies. I don't, of course, it's my job to look at the literature. That's what I do. I'm a scientist, and we do a lot of studies. We publish a lot of papers, and that's a big interest area of ours. And there was a study recently that showed that a turmeric extract given to people with mild cognitive impairment actually delayed the onset of dementia. And this was done under UCLA. And so there's real evidence that this stuff can work. It has to be absorbable, though. That's the problem, because turmeric's not very absorbable. But the Okinawans, they had a lot of dishes with turmeric and other spices that really kind of livened up the food, like I was saying.
When you mix turmeric with black pepper, it becomes more bioavailable, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What about turmeric as a supplement, or is
I
that absorbable?
Yeah, if it's the right kind of supplement, I take a turmeric supplement, and it's see, when I look at supplements, what I do is if I'm going to take a supplement, first of all, there has to be a reason for it. And well, I have a lot of in my family, unfortunately, Alzheimer's is really big, and so I'm especially cognizant of the fact that I'm at risk. So I eat the best I can, I exercise the best I can, and and I'll take certain supplements that have had at least one clinical trial that have shown that there has some effect. I don't, like there's stuff like NMN out there, right? That a lot of people are taking nicotinamide, nicotinic acid, and there's only animal evidence. There's no human evidence, and obviously, what you put in your body, you got to think about, right? I mean, what if you're putting
Right.
in a pill that increases your risk?
So what supplements would you endorse for the average person if you want to, let's say you're middle age, you want to live longer? Is there anything we should be taking every day, no matter what?
Uh, I don't think there's a blanket recommendation for everyone because what I'm about is personalized medicine. So I look at each individual's unique risks and tailor the program to them. So one of the things I do is life expectancy prediction. So I'll look at basically the medical record of a person and have algorithms that basically, if you have these risk factors, this is how many years you might live on average, right? But everyone's unique. So then I tailor it to, okay, what specific diseases do they have? What's their family history? Are they physically active? What's the inflammation level in their body? What are their lipids like? And I'm telling you, I do this. I'm working with a company that does this for basically for people that want to sell their life insurance policies. So they want to, with your life insurance policy, you paid in. If it's whole life, you paid into it for years. Even if it's term life, you if you need the money or for something, you can sell it. But how do you know how long you're going to live and whether it's a good deal?
So if people listening right now want, can they hire you or this company to calculate their life expectancy? I'm guessing you do it with a high degree of rigor.
Yeah, I do. I do it. I'm doing it for this particular company, but I'm thinking of doing it on my own because I really enjoy doing it and it keeps me sharp. But I'll tell you, I look at stuff, and there's these people they're going to these executive health exams, and they're getting like top tests, the most detailed tests. Yet the advice they get, I'm reading these medical records, and the advice they're getting to me is just like so underwhelming. Like, for example, if your body's inflammation level is, any doctor can measure C-reactive protein, right? So it's a protein that's made by the liver in response to inflammation in your body. So you can track it, and it's probably I would say one of the top causes of accelerated aging is when your inflammation is higher than it should be. Your C-reactive protein, if you're really super healthy, it should be less than 1. In fact, it should be undetectable, unless you have an active infection when you need to crank up, inflammation in your body to kill the virus.
Or something.
Right. So, but I look at, I see these medical records of people's C-reactive protein is like 3, 4, and the docs say, "Oh yeah, that's good. It's less than 10. 10 is normal." I'm like, no, it's not. It's normal for the average population, but not normal if you want to live healthy, long life.
So, Brad, besides staying on top of these biomarker indicators of inflammation, from everything you learned studying Okinawans over the last 30 years, we've talked about the diet, whole food, plant-based, soy, sweet potatoes, but what other general advice do you give people who might want to live longer?
I kind of, for sure, the bottom line is you need to get regular health examinations, and you really need to know what your goals are. You want to, if you want to just follow the regular public health recommendations, that's fine. But if you want to crank it up a level and try to optimize your risk factors and your blood factors for a healthier, longer life, then that's a different kind of prescription. But I think it's about balance, about diet, heavily plant-based. And again, I'm a flexitarian. Once in a while I'll have a Hawaiian burger. Maybe I'll feel a little guilty about it, but
Well, I mean,
feel
you look great for 103. I'll tell you what. I mean, you're one of my favorite centenarians.
Yeah. So
how about, you've taught me this notion of ikigai.
Oh, but
the Okinawan.
The other ones, physical activity, right?
Yeah.
Positive attitude. Yeah. Social interaction. Those are things that are huge, I think. Being happy. And now we're at ikigai. Yes. So
somebody
ikigai.
here is asking about pot. I've heard this a lot. No,
I think it looks like poi.
Oh, well, people ask pot too, but we'll take poi next. But let's start with pot.
Well, I don't have an issue with it as long, it's like anything else. I mean, if you and there's so many different types of marijuana, and that have various different compounds in them that can, make a happier mood or a more mellow mood and help with pain control. So I think it's if used judiciously, it can be a very helpful medication. And or just, you know, it's not so much even a medication anymore. You know, if it helps people, you know, it's something to try. But, you know, if you smoke, you know, a whole bag of marijuana and then try to drive your car, you might be in trouble.
Yeah, or do an Instagram live. I found that doesn't work for that either.
Yeah,
So
but the
you
poi question, Dan,
you authored an incredibly interesting paper about
poi's great. Poi's great.
boys. Great. Okay, we got the thumbs up on that. But you found that actually short people, specifically people about 5 feet 2 inches, live longer than tall people. What's up with that? And if I slouch, will I live longer? I'm 6'2".
Yeah, Dan, I don't know, man. We're gonna have to genotype you because you can be tall. And so the reason that I believe that we found that at least one of the major reasons that we found that shorter people live longer is that we genotyped them, and shorter people tend to have higher prevalence of the longevity version of the FOXO3 gene. So everybody has this gene, but only about 1 in 3 of us have the longevity version. So between you and I and one person online, one of us has it. But maybe all 3 of us have it. But in general, you know, 1 in 3. So that and this gene is a stress resistance gene that the biggest has the biggest impact on longevity and healthy aging of any other gene. And it's FOXO3, FOXO3. And we discovered this, the gene longevity effect in humans back in 2008, published that in the Proceedings of the National.
If you know, we're non-medical here. In very simple terms, can you tell us what this FOXO3 gene does to favor longevity?
Stress resistance.
Interesting.
Yeah. And not just like, I'm not talking just like resistance to psychological stress. I'm talking about biological stress. You know, if you have for example, if you have hypertension or, you know, coronary heart disease or other diseases that cause stress on your body, any disease, you know, will cause some stress on your body. But the people that are protected the most from death are people that have the longevity genotype of FOXO3, and they have some kind of chronic disease. So it doesn't necessarily protect you from getting the disease, but if you get one, then you live just as long as people that don't have the gene, or the longevity version, and don't have a chronic disease. So a healthy person that doesn't have the longevity version will live the same as an unhealthy person that has the longevity version.
That's so fascinating. Now, if we weren't lucky enough to get the FOXO3 gene or the longevity version of it, is there anything is there some genetic therapy, or is there a supplement we could take that favors this production of this gene? Or
well, that's the $1 million question, and it really is important. And because if you have the normal version versus the longevity version of FOXO3, if you have the normal version, you have to do a little bit more to be equal to the people that have the longevity version, because it's a stress resistance gene and it reacts to stress. So if you stress your body, like with exercise, for example, or a sauna, your FOXO3 gene will turn on. And what genes do is they express themselves. In other words, they make proteins that go into the blood, and then they talk to other genes, and then, you know, compounds get secreted in your body that help you resist the stress for FOXO3. So what typical compounds in the diet that turn on this gene are, like we were saying before, we talked about turmeric. That's another one, right? That turns on the gene. We've seen it in studies that we've done. There's a compound called Astaxanthin. It's a carotenoid that is present mainly in red-colored seafood, like salmon, are an excellent source. Red salmon, excellent source of astaxanthin. In fact, if you deplete the astaxanthin from a fish, it cannot swim upstream to lay eggs. So the fish
is there a plant-based source of this?
Not really. You can make a nature identical molecule. In fact, there's one called xanthocin with a Z that is nature identical, and the it has two. How shall I say? It was slightly altered so that it has two amino acids on either end. Because the problem with astaxanthin is that it's just like turmeric, really, really, really hard to absorb. 99% of it you don't absorb, so it just comes out, in feces. So if you can make it more absorbable, just like turmeric, then it will be much more effective. You don't have
That
to
makes
take as much.
sense.
Yeah, so the xanthocin is like 3 times as absorbable as other astaxanthins out there. So we actually did a study with that molecule and showed that it activates the heck out of the FOXO3 gene. We showed that in mice that your liver, your heart, and your brain, the astaxanthin expression goes up. I mean, the FOXO3 expression goes up if you take this. We put the astaxanthin in their food. And
I
that was
see.
the first time it had been shown in mammals. We know this in lots of other less complex creatures. So yeah, there's a lot of things that soy flavonoids from soy, they activate FOXO3. Exercise activates FOXO3.
Saunas. Can you talk about saunas, net positive, net negative?
Net positive.
And how often should we take a sauna and how hot?
That depends on the individual person, but I like it hot, and I don't have a sauna, so I have to go out and sunlight turns on FOXO3.
Oh, wow.
So as you can see, I'm a little brown here. So, but I do.
I thought it was a spray on. Well, tell us how we can keep in touch with you, and can you tell us repeat the books that you've written? I'm sure people who listen here want to know more. And by the way, I've read Brad and his brother Craig's books. They're super easy to read. They're full of useful information. He has this ability, or perhaps his editor has this ability, of taking these complex ideas like FOXO3 and making them simple. And so remind us of the books, and how can we stay in touch with you?
Sure. One of the books is called The Okinawa Program, easy to remember. The other one is called The Okinawa Diet Plan. You can get them from Amazon or, most bookstores. And keep in touch. Well, if you want to email me, try wilcoxbj@gmail.com. That's WILLCOXBJ@gmail.com. And Dan, I'm going to give you a link after this. It'd be great to. I was talking to my brother all the way from Okinawa last night. I said, "Oh, I'm going to be talking with Dan tomorrow." He said, "Oh, say hi." And he said, "Don't talk too much about Okinawa, because I'm the Okinawa expert. I live in Okinawa." So
we're going to talk to Craig next.
Do a live Okinawa. Yeah, maybe he'll take his phone and walk around and discover a centenarian around the corner or something.
Well, for the Blue Zone American Kitchen, the book I'm working on, the longevity recipes from America, just 3 weeks ago, we were in Hawaii and met up with you, Brad. And you introduced us some extraordinary Chinese Americans there that are still cooking like they did 100 years ago. And it's a totally Blue Zone diet, and you can still witness it. And you're very generous to introduce me to one of your patients and give us insight. So the genesis of this conversation was that meeting in Hawaii not so long ago. So thank you again for that.
Thank you, Dan. It says here, what book is the best to start with? I say Okinawa Program. It's probably the most comprehensive, but they're both, even though they were published, 15, 20 years ago, most of the information is just sort of coming out now. It's still up to date, and we're actually going to do an update, to give more information on what has happened to the Okinawan population in the last 20 years and what they're doing, and that seems to be effective to recapture the longevity phenomenon. The longevity phenomenon still exists in the older generation. So they're still the longest lived in the world at age 65 and at age 85. But if this bad, behavioral, dietary exercise trend continues, they're gonna lose their top spot even at older generations. So
We don't want that.
oh, and coffee's good. I see. Please,
Coffee's
coffee.
good. All right, Brad, we're going to wrap up here. For those of you who want to, you can direct message me if you have any more questions for Brad. I'll make sure the questions get to Brad and get answered for you. And again, thank you very much for coming on. I'd like to do this again sometime soon. You're a wealth of great information. For those of you who didn't hear me at the top of the hour, just to remind you that Dr. Brad Wilcox here is really the grandfather of Okinawa longevity. He has a great-grandfather, Dr. Suzuki, but he and his brother Craig really responsible for bringing the rest of the world the longevity secrets of Okinawa. He was my main expert and mentor in writing about the blue zone facet of Okinawa. So honored to be with you. Thank you again. And for all you guys who tuned in this afternoon, I'm sending you a big telephonic hug. All right.
Thanks very much, Dan. Really appreciate the invitation. It's been wonderful speaking to your audience, and I hope to see y'all again soon.
We'll do it again soon.
In Hawaii.
All right. Ciao, ciao.
Bye for now.
Bye.